Hey, this is John Mark McMillan, and you're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Gable Price. You know Gable from the band Gable Price and Friends. Amazing conversation. So honored he'd take his time to be on this podcast. So cool to talk to him about his past and his present and his future, of course. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Gable Price. It's so cold, you got nothing to prove, and less to lose. So put your hand on your chest and lay your heartbeat. Gable, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Jeremy, what's up, man? Doing good.
Awesome, man. Tell me what's going on in your world currently. What's your life like right now?
Life right now, I think a lot of it has looked like slowing down from, we were on the road for 2 months door to door.
Wow.
Which is, by far the longest we've done, which I think it's kind of standard in touring world, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we've done much shorter runs than most bands do, just due to routing and how we're not necessarily a Nashville band that can kind of get stops at home every few weeks. Yeah, man. So we've just been just resting. I feel like I'm finally. Now we're probably close to a month post-tour of just like, I think my sleep is finally normal.
Yeah.
And my sleep is finally normal, and but yeah, right now life just looks like finding some sense of normalcy outside of a touring schedule where it's the long days, and your off days aren't truly off. You're driving somewhere, and so just finding normalcy in life and not sitting around and playing in my Xbox every day for, and not being able to bounce back. But those days are fun too.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Where are you living at currently?
I live in downtown Los Angeles. I've lived there since January. Moved from Redding, California, which I lived for 7 years. So it's a very drastic difference between, LA.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to both.
Yeah. The interesting thing about downtown LA that we've realized since living here is I mean, I could completely be wrong about this, but it feels like one of the only cities I've ever been to where the downtown is not necessarily the happening area.
Yeah.
Most cities it's like, oh, I'm going downtown, oh, I'm going downtown. I don't think anyone ever goes downtown for something outside of a Lakers game here. And it's almost eerie at times of like,
Yeah.
whoa, there's 20 theaters on Broadway and 2 of them are actually active and the others are Urban Outfitters and a Apple Store now, and the Globe
That's
Theater
crazy.
is up for lease, and I'm like, oh, is that going to be I guess Foot Locker's in a theater across the street too. It's so strange. I do love it. It's been a nice intro to cities for us. Just, I grew up in kind of rural, I guess not super rural, but Indiana, kind of 30 minutes from Cincinnati, and then Reading is a town of 90,000, and so
yeah. I've been to Reading. I was on tour with Sun Bears, Jonathan Brillin and Jared Bowser, and I don't know if I got to meet you, but I was out that way with them. We were there for 3 weeks, I think, and I went to the Squire Room a lot, and Jeremy Edwardson's studio, the Sound House.
Yeah, totally.
And, so I was out that way for what I don't know if I got to meet you, but I definitely.
I don't think we would have met. I've known of Jonathan Berlin for such a long time, but we really only met last year.
Nice.
In Nashville, and now we obviously both live here in LA, but I didn't know him when he lived in Reading, and so.
He's fantastic.
The Squire Room was quite a place. I missed the glory days of the Squire Room when it was what it was. Now, once I reached 21, the age of 21 when I was in Reading. By that time, I think the Squire Room was only open on Thursday nights or something weird. And maybe they're open now more often, but I just remember it was like, if you ever wanted to go there, it was closed.
That's hilarious.
Our place of choice was called the Rusty Nail.
Oh, I think I've heard of that actually.
Yeah, it's in the mall.
Wow.
And that was kind of where the band and I would have our meetings, and
that's amazing.
It was great. It's a fish tank in there. Yeah, man.
That's cool, dude. Awesome. Well, you kind of mentioned growing up in Indiana and Reading as well. Let's talk about growing up for you musically, how music kind of came into your life, maybe some bands, some records, some influences, even some shows that kind of pushed you in the direction that you went.
Yeah, no, totally. So I was born in a part of Cincinnati called Delhi. And my dad had a job at a steel company in kind of the Norwood area, which is now it's one of the nicer areas, which is it's kind of how Cincinnati has worked, is the areas that you didn't drive through 15 years ago now
a spot. Yeah.
Now are the spots where the houses are above $200,000, which is big in Cincinnati. So my dad worked over there, and then he decided to become a worship leader at a church. And so we moved to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, which is, for most people, it's just kind of where everyone in Cincinnati and Ohio and I think Kentucky as well would go to gamble, just because there's a big casino there, and it was illegal at the time. I think it's legal now in Ohio to gamble and stuff like that. But that was where everyone went, was a casino called Argosy, and now it's called Hollywood. But we moved there, and that's pretty much what the town was. Is it was the casino town with the Perfect North Slopes was the other thing that was there, which is like a man-made ski slope.
Oh, cool.
And which was really fun to have around. So I loved living in Lawrenceburg, but it was pretty funny because as soon as as soon as we moved over to Lawrenceburg, we were a part of that church for, I think, just a couple years. And then my dad got a job at a vineyard church in Cincinnati. But we stayed in Lawrenceburg. And so it's like, we moved from Cincinnati to be a part of this church in Indiana. And then he got a job in Cincinnati. So now we're commuting to Cincinnati. And so, we stayed in Indiana. It was right on the state line. And so I've always told people I'm from Cincinnati, cause it was, 30-minute drive. But, technically from Indiana. But I don't know if I'm quite a Hoosier at heart, but when we play in Bloomington, I'll wear all the Indiana stuff. Hoosiers,
So you said your dad was a musician. Did that influence you? And what kind of records and bands did you kind of get into?
Yeah, totally. So, okay, yeah, sorry, I totally
you're good.
skipped over that part of the question. Yeah, grew up in Indiana. My dad was the worship pastor at a church in Cincinnati. And so I grew up in church, but my dad, he didn't he didn't go into ministry until he was, until we were around and stuff like that. He grew up in like Colorado Springs.
Cool.
He's a military kid. And so he was all over, and he was just into great music. Like, I could talk to him for hours on all the concerts he went to.
That's cool.
So I think a lot of the music I grew up on was more like my dad's, favorite stuff, which is, and then he was always on the hunt to find a Christian song that he liked. And so naturally the first record I'm pretty sure that I owned was The Beautiful Letdown.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, first song I bought on iTunes was College Kids by Reliant K.
Yeah.
So those were big things that I would say that era of Switchfoot and Reliant K was really big for me. And then just growing up with my dad being in ministry, I think he was always trying to find well-written songs in that genre. And so, stuff like Waterdeep or, The Worship Circle and early Vineyard stuff where there was a lot of bongos. I listened to a lot. And then, of course, John Mark McMillan, was
fantastic.
I think the songs Inside the Sound of Breaking Down was a huge record for me. And then as I kind of started getting older and finding my own taste, of course, like Switchfoot and Reliant K, I feel like has always been a consistent for me. Got really into Manchester Orchestra.
Great band.
The Means Everything to Nothing record was the first one that I found them on. I heard I've Got Friends at this farm that me and my family would camp at that our friends owned. That we would just go there every summer, and I feel like I found a lot of the music I listened to there. So, it'd be Manchester Orchestra. I got really into the Avett Brothers. I think me, along with everyone in the year of 2013, got into Mumford and Sons. Those were big bands and projects for me, and I just got really into American Idol too. And so whoever was winning, I was just into it. But I was always kind of into the butt rock sounding people, and so I think naturally, I was Daughtry and David Cook and stuff like that. So yeah, man,
that's awesome.
I grew up a lot on that. I'm sure there's a ton of other records that after this I'm gonna be like, how did I not remember that one? But I think on the subject of Manchester Orchestra, I do think that the Simple Math record
record.
Been my favorite.
That's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite from them.
Which is funny because the only other time, because we have our record Fractioned Heart, and I don't think fractioned is a word. I think the correct word is fractionated.
Really?
Yeah. But the only other time I heard fractioned was in Simple Math.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Simple Math, the truth cannot be fractioned.
Yes.
And that's the only other time I've heard it, and so I naturally thought it was a real word, and I don't think it is. So people always call it fractured heart, and I leave it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, man. So I grew up on some of that stuff, and I know that there's going to be a billion other.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I like Styx a lot. I heard Renegade.
Great band.
We heard Renegade on Believe It or Not, an American Idol duet. And then my dad told me, he's like, "Hey, you got to hear this band." So we'd listen to them and stuff like that. And he'd always show me just great music. And first concert I went to, I missed a part of the bands that I grew up on. There was a Cincinnati band called the Pomegranates I was just like, they blew my mind then, and I listened back and I'm like, yep, I understand why some of my leanings are a certain way musically and melodically. They every year at the farm that we would camp at that our friends owned, they had a festival called Gratis Fest, and Gratis Fest was basically just a free festival for all their friends. It's like you just bring your own food, but everything, you can camp there for free. You can really do whatever you want. But they'd have a bunch of musicians come and play shows, and the Pomegranates came and played a show, and their singer Isaac, we were playing Ultimate Frisbee, and I was a little kid at this point, and he was like, "Hey man, here's our CD." And so I'm pretty sure my parents still have the CD, but I listened to them a lot. And so I would say they were a big part of my growing up music.
That's cool.
But first concert I can remember was the O Gravity tour from Switchfoot. My dad took us to me and my older brother Jonah to a venue in Cincinnati called the Underground, which oddly enough was on a hill. The underground on a hill that's completely above ground. But it was a great show, man. We started to leave because I don't think we realized that there was going to be an encore, and we had a really good spot throughout the show. And man, towards the end, we went to leave, and then he came back up and he played Dare You to Move, but we were out by the door, and so we watched Dare You to Move from as far as possible.
That's amazing. So it sounded like, you obviously growing up in a Christian home, there's a huge influence of Christian music. He was obviously okay with you listening to secular. I know.
Yeah.
It's kind of odd. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I feel like, for me personally, that was always a struggle with me and with my parents my dad was a music pastor as well, but it was very hard line. Like my dad would never have listened to Styx. It's awesome though that you got that.
Oh man,
that world implanted in you, and
my dad did not care. He was like, you can listen to whatever you want.
That's cool.
As long as it's not too foul. And I don't.
No, I get that.
I think I had just such a moral high horse when I was a kid. Like I'd see someone smoking a cigarette and I'd start like tearing up.
I totally can relate to that.
And so I think if there was anything bad in the song, I'd probably just go cry instead of be like, oh, I'm going to try it.
That's hysterical. That's hysterical. Okay. So you mentioned these records kind of coming in. Did that kind of inspire you to start writing? And when did you start maybe, writing your own songs and finding your own voice?
Man, I think that I naturally just started writing songs when I was younger. I don't remember doing it, but there's like a note on my parents' chalkboard that says Little Boat Blue by Gable Price. And I think I was probably 4 or 5 when I wrote like the idea. And even reading it now, I'm like, wasn't that bad? And then, my dad had like a Korg recorder that, we recorded a song on called Late. Late for the class, late for the game, and late for the day. And so I knew the rule of 3s then, which is kind of funny, which I didn't, just naturally of like, you do 3 of the same thing and then you switch it up a little bit on the 4th. And so I think naturally songs were just kind of, it just made sense to write songs because my dad wrote songs. And so that was kind of where I started doing it. But I think when I started really getting into music, covers were such a huge thing then, especially on YouTube, of like, oh, just make an acoustic cover of a song by, I don't know, Mumford and Sons, Lumineers, Imagine Dragons, and that'll be how you make a living in music. And so I think that I got really into just like the acoustic guitar. I'm just going to capo up super high and play G shapes and do a cover of just like a classic song. And so I stopped writing music for a long time. I mean, every once in a while it would kind of pop back up. When I first started listening to like 21 Pilots, I started, trying to write stuff like that. And it was just a lot of copycat stuff that I was doing for a while. And then I joined a band, when I was 18. I started playing guitar in this band. They were called Local Waves at the time. And now they're called Coastal Club. They actually opened, I think 10 of the shows on the Jungle in the City tour for us. I just started playing guitar for them. And I think, so there was a certain point where I was really focused on making my own music. And then I think I just hit a point when I was like 15 where I was just like, I'm just going to play for other people. And, that's all I really wanted to do is I just want to be a guitar player for someone. But then I moved out to Reading and, throughout that year, my first year being there, I didn't really have any musical outlets. And so, man, I just started writing music again then. And I think that's when I really started to be like, oh, I love writing music.
Sure.
But I was also still at the time, I was like, who could I get to sing this song? It was never really like, I'm going to be the one to sing this song. Just because I think at a certain point in my life, I just kind of moved my thought process to I'm a guitar player and I'm not quite good enough to be the front guy.
So when did you come to that conclusion that you were?
Well, I was, Yeah, I don't know. I think I was at a coffee shop once, and I had lyrics to a song that I was writing, and a buddy of mine, Adam, was like, "What's this?" You know, I was telling him it was a song I was writing, and he was like, "We should record this." I was like, "Oh man, like I haven't really thought about that, but I'd love to." And so that kind of started this process of, okay, I'm going to be the singer of something. This is really strange for me. Of course, I mean, I was always down to sing, but it felt like I had a lot of red lights. You know, like,
Sure.
you know, all the places I wanted to sing, you know, all the churches I wanted to sing at when I was, 17, it just felt like every opportunity was just for guitar. And then when I moved out to Reading, auditioned, for, the teams at school and, got turned down for that. And so it's just like, man, there's just a billion red lights. And so I think I just kind of started believing that it wasn't for me.
In the cards. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, oh, okay, I guess what I am is a guitar player, and I'm really not sure how good of one I am. And so it was like, man, like, do I start writing songs and just hoping that someone wants to, like, do I just chase, like, writing for other people? But I don't know enough people. And so, yeah, man, I think it was just kind of like a few steps of learning to believe in myself. As well as, man, I think it took a few of our projects for me to think like, oh, I could be a front man.
Yeah.
Just because it was just kind of this passion project. I'm just going to get this recorded because I love these songs, not necessarily because I'm the best person to sing it. And so I think it definitely took a couple of our projects for me to be like, oh, I actually want to be the guy in this. Yeah. And have, a certain type of writing that enunciates my strengths, as well as when I want to play these live and stuff like that. It was so funny because I tried to start so many bands in high school. And it never, for one reason or another, it never worked out. I never got to play the show. And then like the one time it really didn't feel like I was trying to start a band at all, was the time that it actually worked out. And we started playing and we just kept playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love though that it's kind of when you didn't expect it, and it's kind of one of those things that you might have been like, well, I guess it's not, like you said, in the cards, but ironically it was in the cards. Let's talk about, Gable Price and Friends. Talk me through the beginning of that and why that name, and talk me through that.
Yes. Okay. So I had moved to Redding, California. In 2017, I was in my camper van. It was kind of like a passion project that me and my dad had where I was like, I don't really want to have roommates, and definitely don't want to have two roommates because it seemed like everyone in my school was like, yeah, I'm one of 3 people in one room and I'm still spending X amount of dollars. And I'm like, that's crazy. Why don't I just fix up this beater van and sleep in it, in someone's driveway? And so I did that. But yeah, I moved to Redding, California to attend a ministry school. And, like I was saying before, it just felt like everything was a red light, man. I'd try out for guitar. I'd get turned down for guitar. I'd try out to be a singer. I'd get turned down to be a singer. It was just like, are you kidding me? Like, do I get to make any music? And so, I had 100 total square feet in my van, and I would set up my giant church guy pedal board in there and just play. And the fact that the cops never showed up to my giant white van. Grace of
God. It's the grace of God.
Yeah. My giant white van, the guy with the mustache in the giant white van, playing his electric guitar in the white van, half a mile from an elementary school. I'm like, there's the Reading Police Department is not doing enough. Like if I got away with that, so yeah. And so when, Adam had said like, hey, let's record this. I think that was the start of Gable Price and Friends. And so what we did was needed 4 songs. We're like, an EP's 4 songs. And we're going to crowdfund this. And so we made a GoFundMe for $1,000, which is hilarious that we thought we could make a 4-song EP for $1,000.
That is pretty fun.
And we raised it. My cousin, I think, okay, so he's my mom's cousin. So would that be my second cousin, or would that just be like my great?
It'd be second cousin, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Kurt. We had like $500 that we still needed to raise, and he donated the rest, and so I'm always still super thankful for that. But we went to the studio, and I had like a savings. It wasn't like a lot, but I think it was like $1,500, which I had to basically pay for the gas to drive my van home after the year of first year of my school, from California to Indiana. And I pretty much burnt through most of that to get us through the studio, because we had a friend who gave us a great deal on him producing it and stuff like that. But he was like, hey, who's going to mix this thing? It's like, what do you mean? What is mixing? And he was like, well, I'm not mixing this. I'm just producing this. I'm putting everything together. Someone else has to mix this. And so our friend we knew was a really good mix engineer, but he was like a big dog in our mind, because he was doing real projects and he was going on tours. But he walked in the room and we were just like, hey, how much do you charge to mix? And he was like, I think he said like $800 a song or something like that. Which I think he was big timing us, but like with that number, but I don't think he was, but I'll get to the end of the story. He wasn't actually big timing us, but he was like, well, how much do you have left? And I was like, it doesn't matter. Thank you for letting us know your rates. Cause we were like, man, we have $150 left. We're not gonna, and we have 4 songs. And he was like, well, how much do you have left? We're like, we have $150. He's like, okay, pay me $100. I'll mix the whole thing. Save the $50 to get your stuff on DistroKid.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, crazy kindness just right off the bat. And it's funny because he's produced every single one of our projects since then. And so it's like, his name's Aaron Broman. And so it was just kind of like that one. We were like, oh man, this guy really believes in us. And he's just shown us.
Yeah.
And every step of the way that he does believe in us. Sorry, I had to cough. So he mixed it, and we went into the studio for that one. We recorded what's now called the Reading EP. And basically the reason why we chose Gable Price and Friends, I wanted to call the band Friendship Rings.
I love that name.
It's such a great name. But the guys I was starting the band with, particularly our guitar player Adam, he was like, no, we shouldn't have a band name, mostly because you're planning on moving home to Cincinnati after this year. Because I really was only planning on doing 1 year of school and then moving home. He's like, we should definitely call it your name, and so we talked about like Gable Price and the Boys, like, which I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad we didn't do it. It's fun, but it's just like,
yeah,
like, it's just funny. And we kind of landed on either Gable Pricing Company, Gable Price Collective, which just sounded too Red Collective. Gable Pricing Company just feels like Scooby-Doo. And so we eventually landed on Gable Price and Friends, which is also very Barney and Friends. But because the plan was for me to do this one project in Reading, call it the Reading EP, move home to Cincinnati as Gable Price and Friends, the Friends can change. Okay. And I'd make my next one called the Cincinnati EP. Or the Cincinnati album, or, the Indiana project. And, just kind of keep it going based on where I was geographically. I don't know if I planned on moving every year and making a new album wherever, but it was short-sighted, but I also don't think we thought it was really going to do anything. Because like I said, I wasn't trying to start a band. We weren't trying to start a band. We were just trying to make some music to commemorate a year in Redding, California.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people we were around and the sounds that we were thinking of in that year. And so, man, yeah, it really was just accidental. And I think that the sonically just shifts that we've made, post the Reading EP into Fraction Heart, into if I'm being honest, into Consequence Being Alive. I think a lot of them are just based off the fact that we didn't expect to be a band. Yeah. We just kind of expected to make a couple songs that I was feeling at the moment. And so slowly shifting into what is this band sound, and not just what am I thinking of writing when I was 19,
Absolutely, man. That's cool.
Yeah, man. And so that's how Gable Price and Friends came to be. That's how we chose the name Gable Price and Friends. I think every project since then, we've had other people asking like, hey, do you ever plan on changing the name? Capital has, brought up ideas, and our management has brought up ideas, and I don't know. I feel like it could go either way. I just haven't seen many name changes go well.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. And so it's always I'm always thinking of it of like, do we change from Gable Price and Friends? But I don't know. Man.
I mean,
I've got friends.
You always have friends. The Reading EP you mentioned, kind of how that kind of came to. How do you feel about that EP looking on it? I know your first time in a recording studio, and obviously you said you had an opportunity, someone mixed it super cheap, and I obviously believed in you. just curious how you feel about the EP looking back on it.
I mean, I'm thankful for every step of the band. Like, genuinely, no, like, it's not trying to be cliche. I really am. Just, I listen back to it and I'm like, I'm thankful for the people who made it happen. I think where we were, being in Redding, California, in a ministry school, I think the Redding EP, I think we owe a lot to it. Just based off of the people that were around us, because 50% of the school at the time was international. And the other 50%, like, no one's really, like, there's really not that many people who are actually from Redding.
Yeah.
And so when our friends kind of were all around us and shared it to their respective communities back home, it seemed like it cast a really wide net for us. And right off the bat, it's like, man, the first day this was released, we had people listening in Norway.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. And so I think looking back on the Redding EP, I'm like, I think if we would have released a rock record right off the bat, if we would have released Jungle in the City right off the bat, I don't think it would have done what the Redding EP would have done, just based off of the fact that we were in Redding, California, and that was the music people were listening to.
Sure.
And so I'm grateful for it in that sense, and I really do. Some of the songs, like, I'm like, oh man, there were some really great things there. I mean, I listen back, obviously, and I'm like, oh, there were some very young songwriter moves there. Sure. But and just sonically of like, oh, it's very clear what we were listening to. Then, like, it's very clear that we were listening to a lot of Bethel music. We were listening to a lot of Hillsong. Big, huge sounds. The gushy snare. And stuff like that. And so, I think it fit in the genre we were going for perfectly. And, so I look back on it and I'm like, there wouldn't be Gable Price and Friends without the Redding EP.
Sure.
So I'm fond of it. I really am.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, let's go to the next one, Fractioned Heart. And I know you mentioned earlier, these first couple releases you had was during COVID, so, that obviously impacted being able to play it live.
Yeah.
So did that kind of spawn you to write a full length? Was that kind of maybe the next step? And maybe you're looking back on that record, maybe some memories from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we released, obviously, the Redding EP in 2018, at the end of 2018. In November. So we kind of went throughout that whole school year with that out. And then, in the spring, we did like a one-off single, like right in between, called Magnetic Love.
Okay.
And that one was a little bit more synthy, a little bit more. It kind of had like a Stranger Things feel to it, of just the darkness of it. And it was fun. It was super quiet, which is kind of funny to look back on. I think it must have been like maybe Spotify or Apple Music kind of like squashed it. Maybe we did a bad job on mastering. I can't remember. But it's so quiet. And so I'd have my phone on and I'd be like, why is nothing playing? And I'd turn my speakers up, switch to the next song. It's like, but so we did that song, and that was like, felt like a step in a little bit more of a creative direction, as opposed to just like, I'm making this project because, I mean, somewhere in between recording the Redding EP and releasing it, I decided I wasn't going to move back to Cincinnati.
Sure.
I decided I was going to stay in Redding. And so, with that, I was like, okay, this is feeling more like a band, so let's try to make a little bit more of a band sound. And so, we had a keys player, and that's why, like, creatively, we're like getting a little bit more into it. We're like, okay, just based off of the Redding EP being our best attempt to make a church project, and churches still thinking it was too weird, it's like, let's just make whatever we want to make. And so, we had the, Magnetic Love, and then we decided to play a show. So we played our first show. This is April 2019. We played a show in the backyard in Redding, California, and we had like 200 friends show up, which was awesome, which is also just so specific to being in your early 20s, is having 200 friends.
Absolutely.
And so we played that. That was really fun. And then summer hit. I played guitar for an artist named Mike Maines and the Branches.
Oh yeah. He's great.
Awesome. Just, him and Shannon were both so huge to my life, in that season. I just really, I think, needed them in my life. But on that, I realized how hard it is to tour and how hard it is to make music, of just like the grind of it and the consistency of needing to keep people interested and play these shows and play a good show and then play a bad show. And I kind of took this internal inventory of I think if I had to do that with the music we're making, I think I'd be bored. And I don't think I'm willing to put in the work that I know it's going to take if we're making the songs that we've been making. And so I went back to California after summer break. I flew directly into Sacramento where we played a show, opening for a band. And I was so bored the whole show because all of our songs were halftime. They're all, the classic, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do I do? I've been dancing all summer playing with Mike. We've been running around the stage. It's been awesome. And this just isn't fun for me anymore, this type of music. And so, a couple days later, we wrote 2 fast songs that we still, one of them we still play in our set every night, which is Awestruck Revival. That was the first song that we wrote that was just a driving beat. And so, yeah, man, so the Fraction Heart, project, at that point we had, those 2 songs were like, man, maybe we should just make a full length record. Cause if it's just these 2 songs and 2 more songs, like we're going to put in so much effort and devote so much time to a release strategy that I feel like it's just going to be so short-sighted. Let's think bigger. And so, yeah, man, we moved on to a full length. It was a perfect time of life where, all of us had just unlimited time to just make music. And so absolutely. I just kept writing them. Okay, I've got one more. Okay, let's get together and make it. Okay, I've got another one. Okay, let's get together and.
Was it exciting?
It was so exciting, man. It was awesome. But there was only so many show opportunities, and so I think a lot of our songs would come together when we'd play them together. Otherwise, we're just making them in the computer, which I felt like worked great. But and so yeah, man, it was. We were so excited. It felt like there was energy surrounding us. We went back to GoFundMe and we raised, I think $7,000 was our goal for the album, which once again went way over it. But then we would go out to Sacramento because Aaron Broman, the guy who mixed the first project, at this point he had a studio in the basement of a hair salon. And we would go into his studio. We would go there, Thursday night when we were done with school for until Sunday, because we had to be there on Sunday or else we'd get an absence. Man, we would just kind of we'd record drums at night because it was below the hair salon. So we couldn't do it during the day. And then we would record guitars for what felt like 32 hours the next day, because guitars always take the longest because there's so many different factors, and so we would do that, and then we would, we'd go back home, and then we'd save a little bit, we'd take a little bit more of the money, we'd go back out there, work on more songs with Aaron, and then eventually we got all 10 songs, and we were like, man, we don't have any of the vocals yet, so I tracked all 10 of the songs in one day.
Wow.
And Aaron's a pop guy. And so he's like, we're going to do every section 8 times. And so that would be, a lot, 80 takes.
It's exhausting thinking about it.
Yeah, man. And so, that was Fraction Heart. And it's such a fun process. Now, of course, we released our first single in March of 2020. I think our release date was, a few days before lockdown happened.
Wow. That's a buzz.
And so we released it, and we did this partnership with they're called Amen Worldwide now, and I'm not sure that they're actually doing much, but they were called the Good Christian Music Blog. And so what we did was we did like a partnership with them where basically we gave them our music video and said, you can post it to your channel, because they had a ton of stuff in exchange for that being the only place where the music video was, and they could monetize it and stuff like that. And man, it was such a great move for us at the time. Like that was when we first started having like smaller record labels reaching out.
What labels were reaching out?
It was like Tooth and Nail was the first one that reached out to us. We talked to Centricity for a bit. James Duke was of the A&R, which was
I love James.
Yeah, and then it was Adam Scatula, who's the drummer for Citizens, was the Tooth and Nail guy. And so we were talking to so many great people. And then at the time, I didn't know anyone in the music industry except for this one guy named Dominic Shaban, who I knew he worked at the label in Reading, which is Bethel Music. And he was in like a events role. So he wasn't necessarily the contract guy, but he was the only person I knew remotely close to the music industry. And so I would just send him every contract, be like, hey man, this looks pretty good, right? And he's just like, no, this does not look pretty good. This is 10 years, man. And so he would look over everything. We'd hop on a call. He would hop on a call with the person. They'd talk things. And, so at that point, he just sat me down. He's like, hey man, like, we've all got time right now. It's COVID right now. Can I manage you? Like, I've always wanted to manage someone. Can we just try it out? See how it goes. I won't take a cut, but I want to just see if like we can turn this into something and see if it's something that he enjoys.
That's awesome.
And yeah, man. So it's so great. The first idea that he had is he's like, everyone who is a part of Bethel Music in the touring side of things has nothing to do right now because it's shut down, and they all just want to be a part of something. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to film you guys in a warehouse, and you're going to play through your entire record, and we're going to live stream it so everyone at home can have your release show because you don't get to tour it. And so, man, we got, this probably would have been a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 event, recording, of just the equipment, the people's time. It cost us $800 total.
Oh my God.
And the $800 we spent was on Canvas backdrop. That's
hysterical.
And cause Dom came through with that. And so, that to this day, I think is our second highest viewed YouTube video was the release show for Fraction Heart.
Amazing.
And so that was where we got, more looks. That's where Capitol saw us for the first time. That's where most of like the OG fans are like, I saw the release show, in the garage, or not the garage, the warehouse. And, yeah, man. And so from there, it was like, okay, we're gonna, Dom's our guy for management. And, since then he's got a very successful management company now, and our band has grown a ton. And so it was really cool thinking back to like how both of us were like, oh yeah, let's try this out. And now both of us are like, it's for us,
That's so cool. You mentioned, Capitol coming. What was that like having them those are the big boys, you talk about Tooth and Nail and Centricity, which is great. They're, both incredible labels in their own right. But Capitol's another level. Like, how did that kind of come through? And you obviously licensed the next two releases.
Yeah.
Maybe talk me through that, and then we'll talk about the consequence of being alive.
Totally. Yeah. So basically at that point, we were meeting with Centricity at that point. We were making the Nashville trip. And I had signed a publishing deal at that point with Bethel Music.
Oh, cool.
To write, because I had written on the majority of Christine DeMarco's record with her, and then I had written a couple songs with Corey Asbury at the time, and so they were.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
They were just kind of like, man, we need you to sign because it doesn't make financial sense for you not to, for us or for you, kind of thing. And like, oh okay. And so I signed the deal. It was great. I had a fun time. Very short lived. I would say it was about 1.5 years total. But eventually I moved here, and didn't make sense to be writing in Reading. Yeah, man. So Garrett at Capitol CMG was the first person from Capitol to reach out. Garrett Davis, and we were actually in Nashville on a label trip with a different label. And super nice people. Was not a good fit for us. We knew we were not going to be a good fit for them, but they had rented us the car. And so Garrett was like, hey man, we're right down the road. Like, I can get the whole staff here to come listen to your project and see what they think. And so we all went to East Iris Studios, and because they weren't back in the offices yet, and they just listened to our recordings of the If I'm Being Honest EP. We ate Hattie B's chicken for the first time, which I think is still the best time I had Hattie B's, because every time since it's just been dry. But like that time, it was good, which is why I think it was kind of like the burning bush moment of like, let's sign here, was because the chicken was good. But they loved our project, and Brad and Hudson, who are the co-presidents, were there, and they said some stuff about the music and compared it to certain artists that I've always really been fond of. And so that made me like really, really, interested in them.
That's awesome.
Now we went ahead and we released If I'm Being Honest independent. And it did great. I Need You, the song is still, I think, our number one song.
Great song.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's our number one song on Spotify still. But it's either that or Brother Jack. So we released that like that. I mean, in 2021, great time. Finally got to play a couple shows. We played at a university in Dallas. We played at a venue in Skid Row of California.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy to think about. Now that I live here, I'm like, first off, asking our age demographic of fans
to go there, yeah,
to go wait in line in Skid Row is just so irresponsible of us in retrospect. But thankfully, there were not a ton of people there at the time. Yeah, man, so we did that, and then, early 2022 hits. We've been in contract talks with Capitol for a while at this point. And finally they land the perfect contract. My wife and I got married in Sacramento. And we had to fly to Reading the next day. And, we were like, why don't we surprise the guys? And we just show up and we sign the contract together. And so we all went to Dom's house and we signed the Capitol contract. The Capitol CMG, contract. And we, yeah, man. And so basically with that, there was an agreement for them to re-release If I'm Being Honest, okay, the EP. And so we added 2 live versions on there that we recorded on tour with King's Kaleidoscope, which, retrospect, very, very corny that we recorded our set and released it during an opening set. Bringing crowd mics and bringing a crowd mics and an entire Pro Tools rig, being the opener, so dorky, so dorky.
I kind of love it.
It's great. If someone did that with us, I'd be like, hey,
you're opening, right?
Yeah. It's like when you take the picture with the crowd and you're like, hey, crowd, we're gonna take a picture. It's like, loved our show tonight in this city. It's like, were you opening for someone?
That's hysterical.
Our crowd. Anyways, so we did that, and they, at that point, they had If I'm Being Honest, which was great with us. And then from there, they funded, the Consequence of Being Alive, next project. I kind of skipped over If I'm Being Honest a little bit, but basically we just recorded that in Dom's house, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Same Aaron Broman, who's, like I said, been a part of all of our project. He produced it with our, at the time, bassist, David Funk. And it was really fun, man. Really, really fun project. We definitely stepped into a lot more of an alt space with that one.
Yeah.
We had a song called 50 Milligrams, which I wrote about being on antidepressants while in ministry school and the weird paradigm of that.
That's so cool.
We released that one. That was really nerve-wracking, but we kind of realized at that point, people just want to hear like our fan base just wanted to hear what we had to say. They cause we were so nervous. Oh man, this is not nearly as overtly faith-based as the Fraction Heart record.
Sure.
And I think we realized then, people are interested in how we have to say, of what we have to say and how we have to say things, not necessarily the fact that it has this specific agenda to it.
Absolutely.
And that was really freeing. And every once in a while, we still get the message, hey, are you ever going to make a record like Fraction Heart again? And I get to say, I don't know what the future holds, but we really love what we're making, because what we love making is exactly what we're feeling. And if we tried to make something like that again, without it being where we're at, it would be super disingenuous. And there's enough people forcing that.
Absolutely.
And so we just want our stuff to be super pure and exactly where we're at, and not be another person kind of like, milking the cash cow.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, man. So If I'm Being Honest was the first CMG, it was a re-release. And so we didn't feel the full process, but with, the Consequence of Being Alive, it was great, man.
Was it a big studio? Did you get to go in a big studio for that?
It wasn't like a legendary one, but it was a really cool one. It was called Layman Drug Co. It's right across from, I don't think it's Nelson's Drum Shop. It's one of the drum shops in Nashville. But really cool space. The downstairs is like a performance area, and they had Mrs. Pac-Man, which was really fun for everyone who wasn't recording, at the time. And then upstairs was just the most beautifully lit room. Just endless natural light, just natural, these natural green tints to the room where it felt like you're looking through film. So yeah, we recorded that. I think we had 2 weeks in that studio. which was by far the longest we'd allotted.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
In classic GP&F fashion, we had the turnaround for Brother Jack 3 days after we started in the studio.
Wow.
Like, we want to make this release date. We have to get Brother Jack done. So we recorded Brother Jack first, everything. And then we did drums for a few other songs. And then while the guys were working on guitars with, this project was produced by Aaron Broman and co-produced by, Scotty Mills, who's the guitar player for the band Colony House.
Oh, yeah. Great band.
He's a great guy. We wrote Brother Jack together. And so he stayed there with the guitar guys working out guitar parts for some of the songs, while Aaron went to a different one of Capitol's studio spaces and mixed Brother Jack. And then we sent it off to Joe Causey at Voyager to master it. And, it was a really cool experience because while we're in the middle of working and we're in the middle of the weeds, we immediately got to hear a finished product.
Wow.
And it was just like, dude, it was a crazy experience. Listening to it through the speakers for the first time was mind blowing. Granted, we still had tweaks and stuff like that, but It was like, holy cow. We recorded this in a professional recording studio, and like we're listening to it in a professional recording studio that's paid for. That's
incredible.
We flew out to come record in. It was just like this really cool, like, I mean, so many times along the way, it's like, hey, let's pause. We were in my camper in Reading fighting through the lyrics of this song that we recorded a demo on in my garage, and now we're in a studio that our label flew us to. It was a cool feeling, man. Really cool.
Validating.
Yeah, man. So the Consequence of Being Alive record, wow, every project, we've had drama in the middle of, it's like, it's a bunch of 20-somethings making a project. Like, it's bound to have hotheads. All of us play guitar a little bit, and so there's a peanut gallery. And so, yeah, man. So that one was, 11 songs, I think. Yeah, 11 songs. The last one we recorded was Hold Me Steady, or Jesus Christ, Hold Me Steady.
Such a great song, man.
Thanks, man. And like, that was a really cool experience because it was just like, man, we've been in the grind, and then just playing this song that just feels like it's so raw. Yeah. We did it in one take. And it was just kind of like, after we hit record, like, it was just kind of silent for a little bit, which was pretty cool. Cause it was just like, whoa, like we just did this project, and this song is so emotionally tied, to just life right now. And yeah, man, it was just one of the first big full circle moments.
That's so cool.
But yeah, so that record was so fun, and
how do you feel about it? You love it?
I love it, man. I love the Consequence of Being Alive. There's certain things about the stuff that we relied a lot on digital effects for.
Sure.
Where I think certain aspects of all of our projects have a level of an outdated sound, or it's sounding like, so Fraction Heart, for example, it sounds like 2019.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that makes sense because we recorded it in 2019. Sure. I love a lot of the songs in there. I still think they're cool. But if I heard one of those now, I'm like, wow, those drums sound enormous. You know what I mean? And then with the Consequence of Being Alive, like, I love the project, and there's certain sonic things I would have changed a little bit. Like, I would have loved for probably my vocal tuning to be a little looser. Yeah. Cause I feel like the, Jungle in the City, I feel like is a lot more organic in every single way, which I think a lot of like the natural artifacts kind of shine through better.
Sure.
But that's just living and learning. But Consequence of Being Alive, man, so many of those songs, I'm like, I don't think there was a song that had like a weak chorus to it,
Dude, I would agree with that completely.
Feels proud, where it's just Absolutely. Like, man, we did a good one here, man.
Dude, when I discovered you guys, this is one I heard, and my friend sent it to me, and I was like, I listened to it for like 3 straight weeks. Like, that's all and I was like, my God, this is so good, dude. Like, I was psyched.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we were really proud of it. I think a lot of it was we finished it in the studio, we finished recording, and then it was like we went on tour with John Mark McMillan.
Yeah.
And we're getting mixes while on tour, while fried, while like exhausted, And so I think a lot of the process through it, I think we kind of checked out at a certain point, which thankfully doesn't necessarily shine through the music, but I think it just takes a little space away from it to realize what you made. I was like, whoa, we made something really cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, man, we released Brother Jack as the first single, and it seems like our first single is always just this testing the waters of how people are going to receive the new sound.
What was the vibe? What was it like? Was people stoked on it?
A lot of people were stoked on it. I think that project was the one that we got the most flack from, in the sense of it was so different than Fraction Heart. And I think we expected that everyone was going to be like, oh yeah, they're an alt-rock band now. But man, the Calvinists, the Bible school superstars are like, I fear that you've strayed from the light.
Oh my God, get a life.
You have no idea anything about my life. And so just like these comments are just like, it's like boring. Like, when are you gonna, dude, I remember like, we rarely get these comments anymore, but we posted this festival that actually ended up getting canceled, sadly, but where the Killers were the headliner.
Whoa.
Which was awesome. And we were on the day of the Killers. The Killers are like top 3 bands for me. And someone commented, boring, go back to making your old music.
Oh my God.
And it was just fun to watch just the people kind of team up on him. Of just like, are you kidding? This is awesome. And I'm like, okay,
dude,
cool.
Bummer.
But yeah. So with the consequence of being alive, when we released Brother Jack, people were really, 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 really stoked. This song is awesome. This is great. When we released the album and people, I think, were expecting at least 1 or 2 of like an underdressed, or, which is completely understandable why people were expecting that. Like, especially considering the other projects that had that.
Sure.
There weren't a ton, maybe 10 people that just reach out like, I'm pretty disappointed that there's none of this. It's like, okay, cool. Like,
write your own record, man.
Yeah,
That's
here is a link to the CCLI Top 100. Listen to those. But no, it was like, I think for me, because I do really care. Like when people are like, hey, this song has meant a lot to me, I do really care, and it means a lot to me. And so if one of those people who have sent that in the past then reach out and are like, this is sad to me, I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, And so, for me, like, I definitely take those things personally, and like, I've gotten better at it because I'm like, at the end of the day, anyone can make some music, but like, for me, I have to follow the stuff that I want to make.
Absolutely. You're connecting with people,
Yeah. And if you're constantly chasing an old thing that you did, it's going to be disingenuous.
Absolutely.
If it's not the thing that's on your heart, you can always hear when something is basically like an AI written song of like, I'm going to write with what I think people want to hear. And so for our stuff, I feel proud that we've never done that.
I love that.
And so, yeah, man, so the consequence was awesome. The first day it was out, we got a lot more than we usually do of those type of comments. But once we got past that, it was just like, everything, it outperformed everything,
That's great.
Brother Jack is still a staple, like, song where I think if we don't close with it, it's at least close to the end. Because it's so hard to bounce back from a song like Brother Jack. And so, yeah, man, like I love that record, and I'm so proud of the songs. And I think that I need to eventually revisit it with just like a reimagined type thing for a few of the songs, like we did with Fraction Heart. Of just like, oh, let's hear what this song sounds like in this style. Or do like you remember when Manchester Orchestra had their Cope record?
Oh yeah.
And then they released Hope of all of the songs reimagined in like a dark acoustic way.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, if I did something like that with Easy to Love You and, even Upside, I feel like with like just 12 harmonies would just be, I just think it'd be really fun. And so maybe I'll do that eventually. I don't know. But yeah, I look back fondly on that one, man.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing that. It's encouraging, and it's cool because, for me, like I said, I connected to that record. That's the first time I heard you, so I'm sure I'm not the only one that was just, my jaw was dropped, it was just like, whoa.
Man.
And, I really, truly mean that. Like, I was just like, how have I not heard of this band? Like, it was one of those, like, moments for me.
Yeah.
You mentioned touring with John Mark. What was that like? I know you mentioned him being an influence for you. John Mark's incredible. Had him on the podcast. He's incredible.
10 out of 10, man.
Great dude. What was that like for you?
It was awesome, man. Thankfully, I had hung out with him beforehand. We, when we were on tour with King's Kaleidoscope, we went through Charlotte. I just hit up John Mark and I was like, hey man, like, we had an off day there afterwards. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town. Like, I know we're going on tour together this fall. I would love to
hang out.
And so that we're not meeting each other in the hustle and bustle of the road. And he was like, yeah. So we hung out like, I feel like the whole day, and it was awesome. And He's just such a great dude. Just a ton
Amazing
of wisdom.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we were doing our laundry at Zach Looper's house, was John Mark's guitar player.
He played bass for you, didn't he?
Yeah, and he still plays for John Mark. He plays bass for us too, which is awesome. But so we got to meet him before the tour as well, and which was great. So the tour felt, for the most part, really, really natural.
That's
just to
cool.
step into it. Especially when I think we did 9 shows total, maybe 12 shows. So it wasn't a lot. And we had been on that King's Kaleidoscope tour, and we were only on 6. And so it was just kind of this thing of, we weren't around long enough to make tons of conversation and connection with everybody. And so with this John Mark one, we're like, man, we just really want to feel like we can, like, we just really want to prioritize going out of our way to talk to them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so with that one, man, it was awesome. John Mark needed someone on his crew, to do setup. And so every day I would just show up, an hour before. We normally would, 2 hours before, and just do setup with them. And so some of the longer drives I rode in like the bandwagon with them, which was super fun. And yeah, so I did that. So I got to connect with them and have tons of great conversations. I connected a ton with Stephen Williams.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh, he's awesome, man.
And Jeremy's awesome too.
Yeah, everyone there, Al.
Al, that's right.
Gage, yeah, and obviously Zach and I are real good buddies. But it was just a really cool experience, and just to watch the way that they have conversation, care about each other was really inspiring for our band.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. Well, let's talk about Jungle in the City EP. Just came out recently. It's fantastic. It's another progression in the lineage of your band. Why an EP? And let's talk me through the recording of this and kind of your thoughts on it.
Man, I think with The Consequence of Being Alive, for instance, I can name 4 songs that I thought were going to do way better than they did. And that I still will look at the numbers for them. It's not all about the numbers, but you have to think about it.
Sure.
I think of this song, The Consequence of Being Alive, and I'm like, I can't believe this is the least streamed song on this project. Or Lucky Number 17, which it feels like it's a fan favorite. And I think I was talking to Tim Foreman, the Switchfoot bassist, and he was saying, he's like, man, anything after X amount of songs, just kind of, you're going to have a few that you're disappointed with the results. And so I was just like, I don't want to feel this project. And so I told Capitol, I was like, I want to do an EP. I want to do 5 songs. Or I think I wanted to do 6 songs. And we were going to save 2 songs for our next album. We recorded 8 songs. So we still have 1 more that we recorded where we don't have a plan on releasing necessarily. We will release it, but I have no idea what it will be a part of. And so we just wanted to be able to intentionally promote each song. And,
that makes sense.
And I think just with the current state of, man, the band, or sorry, the music industry, of just like people's attention span seems so short on it. We were just like, okay, the less songs, it's just going to work better for us. And so, yeah, man, we got to record at East West Studios and on Sunset Boulevard and LA, and that was a crazy experience. Just the room, it's a legendary room. I Will Always Love You was recorded there.
Wow.
I know Pet Sounds was recorded in the building. Just Channel Orange was there. Just, dude, everything was in that room. And so it was so cool. We live tracked it, which was awesome.
That's rad.
All of us just playing at the same time, being able to feel the changes in the songs, and just have recording in the basement of a hair salon, and then someone's house, and then like a nicer studio, but then going to a room that sounds like $1 billion, probably because it cost $1 billion. Like, it's just so different of like, let's let the room speak for itself.
That's cool.
Like, let's get some of the room sound in here. And so, man, we just really dug in, which was so cool. I was a co-producer on this.
Oh, that's so cool.
Which was really fun. Me and Aaron were everyone was really involved in so many ways. But me and Aaron, he lives about 30 minutes from me here. And so I would just go there and we work on the demos, and then we'd get into the production of it. And he did so much. I was just there to steer. Like, okay, I want this to sound more like this, or like, hey, I'll tune the vocals because I like tuning vocals. I'm a psycho. But I like tuning them. And so, just those things of let's find ways to make it sound organic while still not just sounding like crap. We don't have the luxury of being able to release a crappy sounding project and people still love it. Like we're not that level. So yeah, man, we did that and then we went right into the Jungle tour, which was 37 shows.
How was it?
Man, it was so good. The turnouts were just so awesome. It was a long tour. And so I think us being a van band,
that's exhausting.
I don't know if we could necessarily do routing like that again, just for, I think, our mental state. Cause it was a long tour. We'd have 6 shows in a row, then one day off and 5 shows in a row.
That's exhausting.
And so,
thinking about it, man.
Yeah, it was gnarly, but it was cool. And it was my call of like, let's pack it in. Because I just wanted to see how it went for us. And so, man, there were some awesome shows. There were probably only 2 shows on the whole tour that undersold the year before. Then everything else was like way bigger.
That's amazing.
Which was such a good feeling, especially with it only being a year apart from some of the other times we've been in that city. Like LA, for instance, I think we did like at the most 200 in 2023. And then we pretty much sold out the Troubadour. We had like just under 500. And so it like, at least doubled. And so it's like, oh man, it's working. It's working.
That's amazing.
Because touring sometimes can just feel like you're beating your head against a wall, to have the same amount of people show up, which is great that people show up in general.
Yeah.
But the thing of like, oh man, I'm leaving home. I'm, investing so much energy, putting my physical state on the chopping block. I want to make sure that we can, grow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. I love that. From the outside perspective, just seeing kind of your social media, it looked like it was bonkers every night, which is so cool. And I got to see that, video of you singing with your dad. I thought that was really cool.
Oh man.
What a moment for you. What was that like for you?
Oh dude, it was so cool. My dad has been such a huge influence, in my music and stuff like that. And so I think I wanted to do something special in Cincinnati for him because I thought about learning. He's been writing this song or been recording these songs with my brother. And I thought about getting my band to learn all of them or like at least one of them and be like, call him up there and, hey, we're playing this song of yours.
That's cool.
But I thought about it and I was like, man, if someone was like, hey, we're playing one of your songs, you ready? I'm like, oh man, I would have loved to prepare for this.
Yeah.
It's like, and so I had texted him ahead of time. I was like, hey, let's do Deeply Human. And he just killed it, man. He hopped up with me in Cincinnati, and then my younger brother Jack hopped up with me in LA and sang it with me. And so it was just like,
cool.
Oh man, this is just so fun.
That is so awesome. That's so rad.
Yeah, I would say that was probably one of the most special moments of the entire tour.
I believe it.
And then every night, just the moment where you point the mic to the crowd and they sing the lyric is always the most special part of the show for me, of just like, whoa, people love these songs. This is cool. Yeah,
they resonate, man, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of resonate, and I guess, let me ask you this. What song are you most proud of and what record are you most proud of?
Oh man.
I know that's hard to, most people are like, oh, that's so hard. They're like All My Babies, but I know.
Yeah. Everyone's got favorites in some way. Okay. I'm going to look at each record. So on my favorite song, I would just tell you my favorite on each project and then I'll think of my favorite overall. My favorite one of our projects, of course, is Jungle in the City. Because it's the most recent. It's the one I felt the most connected to and like I had the most control over and
sonically it's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. On Reading EP, I think that Dead Man is my favorite. Or Dad's Song, cause that's my dad's song. Sure. On Fractioned Heart, I think that Awestruck Revival, I think will always be my favorite in that way. I think lyrically, I think that I still feel really glad to have written Underdressed and Repentance. Those ones feel really significant. Moving on to If I'm Being Honest, I Need You and 50 Milligrams are just some of my favorites. I was surprised that the song, If I'm Being Honest itself, didn't do as well. But I guess that happens on every project. The Consequence of Being Alive, I'm going to say Brother Jack, just because I love when people sing it.
Yeah.
But I think most underrated is definitely Lucky Number 17.
Great song.
Thank you. And then Jungle in the City. With this one, it's tough because I do think that all of them are still new enough to be my favorites. I think Newspaper Boat is probably the coolest song we've made.
Yeah.
But I think Jungle in the City or Mountains and Mundane are my favorite lyrically.
Great.
Thank you. But yeah, man, those are all of those. And I would say Jungle in the City is my favorite, with my second favorite being maybe If I'm Being Honest.
Dang.
Yeah. To the 2 EPs. Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it?
Well, what is the musically for the band? What does the future look like? What, are you recording anything new? Any new tours at all? You know, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's been 2 years in a row of headlining in similar markets, I think that we're open to support. Like, we're open to doing some support.
Switchfoot.
Man, would love it. No, any of, we're really open to just supporting any band that we would love their music and feel like we could resonate with their fan base. So that we're open to that. With that being said, we're not planning on scheduling a ton of touring for next year outside of one-offs and stuff like that, to leave things open. Now, if nothing comes up, I'm sure we'll find ways to make it to some cities. But in terms of, I'm just writing all the time right now. I've been with Aaron Broman a lot, the guy that we've written with, and produced a lot of the projects with. He and I have been together at least a couple times a week. Getting back together with Scott Mills soon from Colony House to write some more songs.
That's cool.
And then I'm also just constantly writing to see if, what I can come up with on my own, to then when I bring it to it, it's just so quintessentially Gable Price and Friends lyrically. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, man, writing a ton. I'd love to just keep writing. I'd love to write on other people's projects this year. And yeah, and just if touring pops up, it pops up. But if not, like, we're wanting to build this thing, find ways to build it outside of just being on the road for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're always looking to do something, always looking to spread the word in new ways, but also not really trying to play the constant 500 short form video.
Dude,
game.
Totally get it. Totally
POV, get it. You just found a new band.
Let me ask you this finally. I know you can't predict the future, but personally, what does the future look like for you?
Man, I hope bright. Man, I really do think it just looks like making a lot more music and finding new things to say. Not even finding new things to say, finding new ways to say the same things we've all been feeling. And so I don't know, man. I could see us doing a full length record. I could see us releasing a couple singles or something like that in between while we're coming up with that. I could also I could see going back and reimagining some old songs. I just feel it feels like a creative time for me. It feels less of like a let's get in there and let's grind as many shows as possible, and it feels more like we've got a lot of songs. Let's find a way to either make more of them or make the most out of the ones we have.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta strike while the iron's hot too, you know?
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I hope the iron's hot. I feel like
it's hot.
I feel like it's hard. I feel like it's hard to tell. You know what I mean? Like, of course people come to shows is special, but I'm like, when is it, when's it hot? Is it warm? Is it hot? Is it cold?
Bro, it's hot. It's hot. When I saw you guys, I was like, this should be in an arena. I think I told you that. I was like, these are arena tunes, bro. Like,
that means a lot, bro. For real. Well, for real. Thank you.
I mean that. I truly mean that. You guys have got fantastic songs. I just really appreciate all you guys have done so musically and getting to know you, recently. It's just really, really been awesome. Hey, thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really appreciate it. It's been so cool. Such an honor to have you along for the ride. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at The Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill. Thank you again for the kind words, the messages. It's been so cool. So thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you to Gable Price. So honored to have you on, man. Really cool to get to know you over the last couple weeks. Just really honored to have your perspective
on your career currently and in the future, of course. So thank you, Gable, for your time. Got some incredible artists on the horizon, guys, and you know it. Nostalgia is still a heck of a drug.